Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the second part of the Writer's Tales Class of 89 video. The first part you probably see when they'll come out really, obviously I'm filming this in advance really at this time. So yeah, Class of 89 is already out. Class of 96 now. Some people might be asking what hang on, is it like a different spin-off show, like a follow-up show really? Not exactly, it's still the same thing really. It's just for a different title and also different characters. Apart from one, which is Scott Chisholm, he's still the companion of this thing. Really, that of what I've been working on for 5 years. Now we've got 14 new characters to go on through from the 90s, between 1990 and 1996. Why stuff from 1999? I feel like because the shows before 1997 were interesting and also experimental, very different, and also very lot of interesting gems there. I think after 97, I think from 97 onwards, the whole TV landscape started to change a bit really in terms of shows, really a bit more light and fluffy, a bit more, I don't know, aimed for preschoolers, I think really. Whereas beforehand, it was a free for all really. You can just have a bit of fun. Yeah, there's some still good gems there really. Some maybe little bits and pieces there after the late 90s, but nice from after 96 and into 97, just things sort of changed really actually. And I thought maybe just stick like that really. So we've got some new the 14 new characters which we'll get through just now actually. So as I mentioned before, Scott Chisholm is still the companion for for this thing really for all 6 seasons. He's still the main companion. It's just that we've got 14 new characters. So the characters from the 1980s have gone. They've changed really. So as part of it really, in part is, as I mentioned before in the first video, it's inside Scott's head. It's also in his mind. And for some strange reason, some bizarre reason, the characters like Pathfinder, Sam, whatever, they've all changed. They've all gone. Instead, we've got these new characters from the 90s, of course, which we'll get through now. So, first up, we've got Fox. He's voiced by Rupert Farley. He's from the Annals of Farthing Wood. We've got Rufus, voiced by Stuart Locke. He's from the Dreamstone. Then you've got El Nombre by Steve Steen, who's from that Number Time series, really. But he got a series in the 2000s later on, but he first appeared in the 90s in the, again, the numbers, what do you call it? Series. I forgot the name now. Obviously you saw Pip in the 90s, so there we go. He's in it. Phantom Cat by Robert Powell, again from Phantom Cat. Davenport, Martin Jarvis from Four Ways Farm. So Martin Jarvis is basically has played two characters. He's the only voice actor to probably appear in the two versions of this really. First being Huxley Pig and now Davenport, the sheepdog. Then you got Rowley from Sean Barrett from something called The Fruities, which is like some weird Spanish show. Obviously, I think I saw looked at recently, and I looked at it's like a bizarre show really. And also done PVC figures and stuff like that. So sticking with stop motion animation stuff, some of them, a good portion of these actually have like physical models they do stuff like like Fox, Rufus and Phantom Cat and Rowley at the moment very much I'll have like physical models really that I've noticed in terms of like maybe like like PVC figurines and stuff. So I thought might as well stick like that. And Rowley's interesting. He's a walking pineapple. He is. If you haven't seen The Fruities, maybe just give it a look actually. Then you got Lil Skeleton, Griff Rhys Jones by Funny Bones, obviously. Harry Jeremy from the same show. So he's voiced by Brian Blessed. He is. I mean, I was looking for like a strong, tough voice, and Brian Blessed so the right fit really for Jeremy in a caveman. So that's something. Joshua Jones, George Layton from the same show, the same name. Then you've got Lizzie, voiced by Nonny Hazelhurst. Lizzie's Library, which is an Australian TV show that came out in 1995. Little known really. It's very unknown show that is. I mean, it's from Australia, so it's never been broadcast around here in the UK. I don't think so, really, to my knowledge. I just found about that maybe last year, actually. I think about that. So that's interesting. Think of like it's very like Postman Pat, but it's set in an Australian town. She's a mobile librarian, and again, it's like Postman Pat, but a woman, but it's and it's also she's a mobile librarian. And you have like Aussie characters as well included. Aboriginal man called Monroe as well. Interesting if you want to check it out. Then you got Mumphy, who's voiced by Patrick Breen, who's from the Magic Adventures of Mumphy, the Britt Allcroft animated show from the mid-90s. Yeah, obviously it's got. So he's there included. Then you got Okie Doke, voiced by David Holt, again from the same show. And then you got George, voiced by Alan Bennett from the Story Store, as well, if you're familiar with that show. And then you got Bill Wizzle, who I'm not too sure who his voice actor is, unfortunately. I don't know if it's Al Buganzi, Jim Norton, or Glenn Mills, or whatever. I'm not too sure his voice actor is. If you find out Trigger People, just let me know. Again, from the same show. So Bill Wizzle from Trigger People is in it as well. And so there we go. That's the 14 characters included, and they'll be sort of down below anyway in the description. So let's go for the stories now. Let's go through series 4, 5, and 6. The last 3 seasons to go through. So yeah, let's do this. Let's get the stories ready. And yeah, so series 4. Let's begin. So episode 1 is Love and Napalm. The TARDIS lands in Hue in 1969 during the Vietnam War, and the smell of napalm is very apparent. The Doctor's companions suddenly get captured by a group of soldiers consisting of 19-year-old teenagers who have a Vietnamese prostitute in tow, having deserted their captain, later revealing that they killed him. The soldiers start seeing strange movements nearby, and the Doctor suspects that aliens who invent technology are hunting them to lead them into a bad survival with the actual war that is happening. That's Love and Napalm. Episode 2, The Fires of Darkness. Landed in Baltimore in 1999, the Doctor is drawn to various graffiti walls sprayed with the words "Bloodsuckers beware." People have gone missing during the night, and small trails of dry blood have been spotted sporadically around the city. A legion of vampires consisting of hospital porters, organ couriers, and even gynecologists have created a new form of blood that will convert any living animal into a vampire in seconds. You get a strong burn sensation, and then you get the pine for the taste of blood. The day the blood hunt has begun. Episode 3 is Double Star. The giant beetles of the planet Elixion, led by their queen, produce an intelligent boosting elixir. However, the Doctor discovers that this is because the abbot of a human monastery on Elixion is feeding people to the beetles. The abbot now intends to see what happens when the beetles consume a Time Lord. Elsewhere, a salvage crew is drawn to an area of space filled with wrecked ships. A creature called the Engineer is using parts from the vessels to construct an immense warship, and that's Double Star. Episode 4, Redemption's Dawn. The TARDIS lands on the planet Halia, and the inhabitants are on the brink of war. The Poodle race are locked in a battle with a galactic scoundrel race called Philinetta, who are searching for a hidden treasure that the Poodles obtain and plan to eliminate them to steal what they've got. The Doctor's companions actually get succumbed to a hallucinated jug and are left on the sidelines. And the Doctor discovers what the Poodles are hiding, that the Philinetta are after. Playmates from 1958 to 1968 in cryogenic pods. Episode 5 is Flowers in the Dirt. Norwich, 1992. Following the recent deaths of Brad Davis, Tom Fogerty, and Freddie Mercury, a brand company called Interland have created a new contraceptive to assist the growing urge to encourage couples to have safe sex. However, due to a shortage of sheep intestines, the company decided to experiment with human intestines and managed to make it work. However, as the public start using them to prepare the contraceptives, they start to animate and start ripping off multiple people's genitalia. The Doctor's in town, and Sally's cricket tournament viewing will have to wait. That's Flowers in the Dirt. Episode 6, The Order of Death. The realm of Calaver is suddenly attacked by a giant worm, and the king recruits his noble slave Johanna to hunt the creature. Johanna is later joined by someone called the Doctor and his accomplices, who are travelling in a blue statue with a light on the top. Johanna instead of killing the creature, while the Doctor plans to capture it to study its behaviour. While the towns start becoming a hostile feeding ground for the oncoming worm, Johanna and the Doctor will sort their differences out while trying to hunt the creature before more damage is done. Episode 7, Chain of Commands. Glasgow, 1997. The TARDIS lands outside the entrance of Scottish Television Studios during the production of the children's game show 50/50, and the Doctor and his companions decide to observe how it's being made for broadcast. But the studio suddenly get hijacked by a group of Sontarans as part of a war propaganda scheme to invade Earth. The Doctor's companions must prove that they can win 50/50 by completing the 9 contest From the spine to the avalanche, a bit with deadly bells and whistles courtesy of the Centauran battle fleet. Episode 8, Stopwatch. The doctor detects some distortion happening in Brooklyn in 1925, and he comes to the presence of Stutz Maloney, a time traveller from the 25th century who has established a business selling goat rock hooch and plans to make a profit out of it. But in his possession, a pocket watch that freezes time at his disposal. But this doesn't affect the Doctor. This intrigues Maloney and assumes that he's north of this world. Events lead up to a game of cat and mouse on the streets, with the Doctor using his wits to stop Maloney stopping time for his pleasure. Episode 9, Grey Area. The TARDIS lands on the planet Fomalhaut 4, where the 4 Union section is held. A holiday camp consisting of colonists from America, Australia, Britain and Japan, who are searching for the opposite sexes as part of a polygamy program. While the Doctor's companions end up interacting with the colonists, the Doctor discovers a hideous secret involving an alien race who have devised the program and plan to use the spouses to smuggle their eggs to the colonists' home planet to invade. That's Grey Area. So, episode 10, Just Seeds. Berlin, 1998. The city's gay nightlife is threatened by an unknown force, and the general public believe that the men are hallucinating on drink or drugs. But an increase in disappearances during the next few nights spark the investigation. That's when the childlike voices are being heard. The Doctor and his companions are led into the seedy underbelly of drag queen show business, prostitution, drug trafficking, and Euro dance music. This leads to a revelation that originates from the Second World War, and the main question is asked, do fairies exist? The penultimate story of Season 4 is SoulEye. The TARDIS lands on the planet Vibeslow 7, a high-tech prison planet, and one that's completely worldwide. Unfortunately for the Doctor's companions, they've landed in the section where female prisoners roam. This includes arson, serial killers, and child rapists. One section of the prison has just opened and is mainly used to replacing limbs if the prisoners get mutilated during fights. But it holds a dark secret, where the replacement of human parts is with metal and plastic. Comes from a factory for the ignition of a takeover. That's SoulEye. And the final story of Season 4 is the Unplugged Ooze. San Francisco, 1967. The summer of love is in full swing. Psychedelia, drugs, free love, and peace are in the minds of the young. A new form of LSD is on the streets, and this time, the acid trips are more surreal to destroy the brain cells in a matter of minutes. An invasion is brewing underneath Golden Gate Park, and the hippie revolution is put at risk of dissolution too early. The Doctor, along with a group of flower children, dig underground to discover a cavernous hive filled with gastropods, and their sinister plan to insert the poison slime to form an LSD to sell it in order to take down counterculture. And that's Series 4. So let's briefly go through these stories, of course. So then we've got, first we've got is Love and Napalm. That was written for the Last Adventurers, when the Last Adventurers really kicked off. I always like to start, I grew up with watching Vietnam War movies. I mean, Full Metal Jacket and Hamburg Hill are probably the ones I've seen as a kid on VHS back in the day, really. So I've always wanted to do a Doctor Who story on the Vietnam War. That's about it, really. Sign out the Jujunga are based on the original designs of the Predator, which Jean-Claude Van Damme had put on in the suit, really. So they're based on the designs of the original Predator, rather than the Stan Wilson version, really. So it's more that, I don't know, like a weird botched chicken, I don't know what you call it. It's like Aragon from the Aragon from Arc of Infinity, something like that, really, on there. So that's the Jujunga. They're pronounced as alien hunters there. So we've got Fires of Darkness is next. It's all based on, now this actually originates from, I won't say like the fan audio series, but I think it originates more, I think, at the time. Maybe some bits and elements of stories, stuff like that. I mean, I was thinking about reimagining some 8th Doctor books. Vampire Science was one of them, along with War of the Daleks, really. Do some reimagining. I could probably might do something better with, look at the title, see what it's about. I could probably do something better with it. And originally, it was like set in New Orleans in the 70s. It was called Blood Tyrants, is what it's called. And it was like a blaxploitation story. But I don't know, I felt very underwhelmed by it, and also reworked it a little bit. And it focused, and also it's got it's got elements of Blade, really, like the young clan, like Stephen Dorff's clan, sort of take over the elders, really. And it's like these like young, like in the 20s or 30s, trying to make their own version of Blood, turn people into vampires, really. That's really about it, really. I can probably say about the Fires of Darkness. Oh, it was a working title for Project Twilight, the Big Finish audio. Just to let you know, that's what the find out the title comes from. Now, episode 3 is called is obviously Double Star. This is actually 2 unmade Doctor Who stories woven into one. Space Sargasso, which is the whole salvage crew with the engineer. That's why Philip Martin, that's from like the Colin Baker era. And the other one is, as you probably mentioned, is Elixir, which is the Robin Mukherjee story during, I think it was like considered for season 26, also considered for season 27 if it was ever made in 1990. I think that's Sylvester McCoy's final story. I always like that idea, really. So I basically just blend them two together, and the idea is they're having, so basically, like, you know, Joshua Jones, Fox, whatever, Rufus, whatever, are on Elixir, facing the Abbot, and also they're having communications with the salvage crew, who are just like above the planet of Elixir, and they're like surrounded by spaceships, whatnot, and they're having and they're sort of communicating with each other, mainly to communicate with the crew, just to make them survive or get away from the wrath of the engineer, that type of thing. But there we go, actually. So that's what Double Star is really about. So it's 2 Doctor Who stories merged into one. You know, 2 events, 2 different stories are happening at once. They are. You know, one on a planet and just outside the planet in space. So there we go. So episode 4 is Redemption's Dawn. The working title comes from a Daniel Blythe 5th Doctor misadventure that I think he planned to do, but nothing came of it. Like he submitted a Virgin misadventure with the 5th Doctor. I think that was the time when he did Infinite Requiem. That was in 95. So yeah. So bits of it. I mean, some of it comes from another story. I forgot what it's called now, but I think I called it Glorified Reckoning. That was a Dalek story. Again, involved poodles. Poodle race from Mad Dogs and Englishmen, and a filling letter from Invasion of the Cat People, Virgin Misadventure. So a lot of the novels are sort of breached into here, really. And the whole thing about the Playmates and Cryogenic Frozen come from that Glorified Reckoning story with the Daleks, which I think the original idea was the Daleks were meant to take over a space station as a lookout thing, like a small group, like 4 Daleks, really, a small group of them. And they basically have a conflict with the Poodles, and obviously, and they got these Playmates from 958 to 968, which are the, if you've ever played Mafia 2, that's the you know, the collectibles you get, like you get 50 models you do from 958 to 968 you do. So there we go. That's a little funny thing, really. But yeah, it's just a mixed mash of all sorts, like an old story mixed together with the poodles from Mad Dogs and Englishmen, BBC, 8th Doctor Adventures, BBC Books, and the Virgin Misadventures, Invasion of the Cat People. It's like cat and dog find each other because they've got, you know, Playboy models in pods or something. It's funny. It's interesting. Also, the Master was originally meant to be in this as well. He was instead of the companions, he was meant to be the Master, who was probably, you know, dumped on this planet. And also just off his tits on drugs, really. Like this powerful who's like drug is basically just drove him mad, like he's stoned over his head, something like that. Obviously, it was changed. Now, episode 5, Flowers in the Dirt. It's named after the Paul McCartney album, which I've known about for years. It's one of the Paul McCartney albums I've listened to when I was a kid, very long time. One of my first ones, actually, I've listened to. Obviously, it's obviously with Flowers in the Dirt. It focuses on the whole HIV/AIDS thing, really. I mean, the idea itself, you know, it seems like it's like a botched horror story, body horror story involving contraceptives, you know, being alive. Really, I was doing some research looking into this sort of stuff, and they said, oh, they use sheep intestines, and I thought, I wonder if they use human intestines to make contraceptives. And I thought the idea, oh, they can probably just reanimate and cause chaos and rip people's genitalia off. And obviously that's the story. And obviously Flowers in the Dirt, I think, you know, I don't know, I think, well, deflowering or something like that, you deflower the bird, you're pretty, I don't know. Again, just like another word for sex, really. Like, I don't know, really. It's just like a little reference. Flowers in the Dirt, I don't know. Deflowering, gone wrong. Sex gone wrong, I don't know. Could be like that, I don't know. But it's a grim story. It's one of those more brutal video. It's like Family of Noise. It's like brutal body horror type stuff, really. It involves genital mutilation and everything else, like, you know, like that, you know, like, again, like condoms, contraceptives, you know, that sort of thing, just spring to life when they're being used, like that. Quite graphic stuff. Order of Death, named after Public Image Limited song, which is used in hardware. Originally titled The Conqueror's Worm. That was I believe it's a first Doctor story. Yeah, that was. I mean, actually, I think what I can remember was with Fire to Darkness. That was an 8th Doctor story. When, again, like Vampire Science, really, just something like that, really. Whereas with The Conqueror's Worm, that was the first Doctor story I've written. I did. I just changed it to Order of Death. Just trying to see if you've ever watched back in the day, SpongeBob SquarePants. They did that episode about the giant worm attacking Bikini Bottom. Basically that, but with Doctor Who elements in it, really. Well, basically the Doctor Who's version of that story, that SpongeBob SquarePants story, really. And also you've got your Honda, who's based on Vin Diesel. So again, playing to his Dungeons and Dragons fantasy obsession. Really, if you're familiar with what Vin Diesel's like, really, bit of a fantasy nut he is. He's a big D&D fan he is, so plays up to his strength. It's more like Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy, Star Wars-esque type kingdom that he's living in, some of this realm, fantasy medieval realm, whatever you call it, and a giant worm, sort of like a giant maggot worm or something, that just engulfs villages and towns. Really, there we go. That's Order of Death. Chain of Commands. That was a working title for Business Unusual by Gary Russell. So, for what I remember of this one, it was called Doctorate. It was called, and it was a 6th Doctor story. It was actually a more Doctor story with the 6th Doctor, 3rd Doctor, and some random incarnation of the Doctor played by David Banks. Also it had Brigadier Bambera in it as well. It did. So it would involve some Sontarans. It did. Strangely, multi-Doctor story with Unit and Sontarans, and it was meant to be set in Cambridge, and the year stayed the same, really. Indeed, but obviously I was looking about. I don't know. There was a working title song called 50/50, and I had to look. It's like I'm pretty sure there's a game show called that I remember seeing years ago, a long time ago. Obviously there was, really, and it was actually first produced in 1997. So I thought, okay, I can probably do something for that. Had a bit of research and look through what can I do with it, of course, and obviously. Sometimes take over to like a children's game show, hold everyone prisoner, like a war propaganda thing, and everyone has to play games like Celestial Toymaker, but with some tyrants and a bit more brutal, and a bit more graphic, I would say. And also, St. Glasgow was one of the 90s, so that's something. And basically, sometimes take over a television studio, really, and be like, have a bit of comic relief, and a bit of, that sort of thing. If you've ever seen 50/50, much like that, really. Okay, Stopwatch. So this story came from something interesting. It's like I was reading something called Universe.net. I look at sometimes in terms of like look at novels and audios. So mainly novels like Expanded Media, and they have like a section of unrecorded adventures. I was looking for the past Doctor stuff from the 3rd Doctor, and there was like an unrecorded adventure that the Doctor faced a guy called Studs Maloney in 1925, or encountered a character called Stutz Maloney in 1925. And I thought, I could probably just do something like that. Also, the Goat Rock Moonshine comes from that site that I saw it in. I don't know which book it comes from. It comes from past Doctor adventures they mentioned. That's briefly touched over. And he's mentioned, I faced this guy in 25 in Brooklyn or something. And I thought, maybe just do something like, it's like, the whole thing with the Stopwatch is based like Click, really, if you see the Adam Sandler movie. Stutz Maloney is based on Christopher Walken. And this would have been, what was it called? It would have been a 7th Doctor story, a Sylvester McCoy story with Ace. I don't know if it would have been like in between season 25 and 26, or maybe after Survival. I'm not too sure. But it would involve 7th Doctor and Ace, really, in that story. So it would have been interesting. Grey Area. So I did an original version of Grey Area, involved like a murder mystery, and so like I don't know what you call it. Which would have been based on something I'd written. I think it was like another version of like, you look at the title and sort of read about the 8th Doctor stuff. So like Vampire Science, War of the Daleks. War of the Daleks has like, well, my version of sort of like War of the Daleks involved like some bits and pieces that were used in Project Barrier. Grey Area does a similar thing. What's it called? Parallel 59. That was one. I just don't imagine like government and the Doctor's sort of like costume very much is removed, and same with the companions actually. So they basically wander around like white dressing gowns, like or white gowns or something for the remainder. So well, companions do. The Doctor really doesn't. Because it's explained really that I don't know. It involves like chest hairs or something to do with Time Lord's skin. Like a person can't remove his clothing. Can't remove his clothing. Only the Doctor can, or probably a Time Lord can't really. I think or Time Lord really. They can remove their clothes at their own time. If someone does that, they can't. So it's basically like, you try and rip someone's shirt off, you can't. It's all stuck on. So it's like, you try and rip it open, it fails. It's like sort of indestructible in a way. Unless it's like the Doctor's like free will, depends who you trust really. It's all like that. It's like that really. Although maybe when he's dead, I don't know, if a Time Lord's not still dead, they have to decide basically like, rip it off. But if he's still alive, can't rip his clothing off. Only the Time Lords can, in case the Doctor can really. If he wishes to change his clothes, someone can't do it for him really. So he has to do it himself. It's just how it is. Like a little weird thing going on. But instead I changed it. So the story about that one came from a dream I had. It's a recurrent dream I had actually. And involved, being in a place with various different people involved from America, some people from Japan, Australia and America, go off and, mingle with people of the opposite sex really. And, see where that takes you. That was a recurrent dream I had for a bit, and I sort of remember it. It's like, oh yeah, and I think I did sort of plan to do this as a totally different story in itself. Again, like Entrapment and European Sun. It was basically that sort of thing. It was more like a comedy thing, really. Like it's like a summer vacation comedy thing that I saw written. Then I just changed it a day. I thought, like, you know what, I could do something a bit more batshit crazy and do something, and look at how many, like all this sort of rituals, like polygamy rituals and stuff. Like how many women can you marry? Very much, it's like some weird sex ritual or something like that to like a life partner proceed and stuff like that. And we get introduced to the Veridans, who the name comes from a story that Nabil Sharan had written called The Invasions of the Veridans in the 70s. Obviously, he played Syl in the Colin Baker era, Invasions of Maris and Mind Warp. And you read that. So the name comes from Nabil Sharan, which I do credit him for. Cheers, mate. So again, they're sort of like, think of like Time Worm. Think of like the character, like the NC, like think like Species, something like that, really. Like female humanoid alien creatures, that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's grey area. AKA the Four Unions. I think that's the word. That was like a working title for the comedy version of it, really. And the Doctor Who version is called Grey Area. Just Seeds. So this would have been another story that I'd written in 2012. Or actually, at the time, I don't know. Maybe at the time of the Milk of Paradise, I think. It was originally called Bruderkind. It was basically the same story, but it was an Eighth Doctor story. It's called Bruderkind, really. And obviously you've got fairies, of course. I think it's more inspired by the, what do you call it? Small Worlds, the torture episode, which I'll tell you what, they're freaky little fuckers they are. Those fairies, jeez. Because I remember seeing it, because I've seen the first 5. I think this was the first 5 when Torture would come out, and it really put me off. I didn't bother watching the rest of the series until I would say when episode 11 come out with Combat. I think so. Then I watched the whole entirety of Torchwood Series 2 afterwards, and Children of Earth. I did. Yeah, so I thought, like, maybe look freaky, I could probably do something with them, and tackle German gay nightlife or something like that, really, and do some weird shit really about that stuff. And yeah, it's just really cool that. So there we go. It was originally named after a story called Budokind, and that's about it. So, but basically the story's the same, really. Sounds the same. The whole thing with the Eighth Doctor going to this, like, involved in the world of gay nightlife, drag queens, drugs, and everything else, that sort of thing. Very sort of quite dark in Eurodance stuff. So there we go. SoulEye, another Cyberman story. This is again another heavily inspired thing by Alien 3. So same with Project Barrett. It does involve. It's set on Prison Planet. Cybermen involved. You've also introduced this character. I don't know. He's not one named, but he's like a controller. It's like a scientist, like a Davros, very much. If you've ever seen the designs on the Cybermen, what they originally meant to look like, when they came back in 2006. I think Neil Gordon designed like like a wrinkly grey-skinned man with sort of antennas and stuff. But it's sort of like 10th planet, moon-based, Tim Simon Willis space type style. More 10th planet, but humanized, So it's like a mixture like Davros, Sharos, Jack look on him, and he's like created like he makes his own version of the Simon. Obviously, it's obviously using like Simon come from different factions. If you're sort of familiar with Simon, if you look at the book Simon by David Banks, it's probably there's like a little weird flowchart, like some Legend of Zelda type stuff involved. Like it's quite bonkers and mad. But that was one. What's it written for a Doctor? I think it's written for John Pertwee actually, like a third Doctor story. This would have been like, I think in between Green Death and Time War, it's like a solo third Doctor thing, really. So there we go. I think the other thing, fill the gaps like him facing Simon at some point. Obviously, people have done that, and people are still doing that. So there we go. So SoulEye. I just don't know. I don't know where the name comes from. Really, I just think of like God Engine, Craig Hinton, so forth. Like, oh, like just putting two names together. That's all. Two words together and for like, no, I'll do. Really, SoulEye. I don't know. Souls, eyes. I don't know. Simon. I don't know. There we go. Then we got the Unplugged Ooze, the final one. This was written in 2012, and this was the first Doctor story. It was originally called The Slime. This was. It was the first Doctor and Dodo story with Dodo in. Heavily inspired. I watched a film years ago called Revolution. It's like from 1968, about the counterculture in San Francisco, about all the different things in terms of drug taking, music, psychedelia, naturism, or nudism and all that sort of thing. And I was like, Jesus Christ. I mean, I was very fascinated by this whole thing, the whole free love and the people's free state of mind and stuff like that. And it really just like spoke to me. I don't know. It's like it really captured something in me actually. I thought I'll just probably do a story like that. There was one story beforehand, which is the Tell Us Novella Wonderland story by Mark Champbell, and that really explored it. I think Bernie Summerfield's audio as well, I think, explored that as well. Again, it's like looking at like the punk movement, Doctor the punk movement. You never see something like with the San Francisco counterculture in the late 60s. You never really see something like that, really. So I thought I'd look at it really. The Unplugged Ooze is just like an old title that's picked. It's also got the gastropods from the Twin Dilemma in as well. So, and also, they're trying to take over using their own slime and infesting in LSD or something like that. So there we go. So the Unplugged Ooze probably is like a prequel to the Twin Dilemma, very much. So there we go. It's got gastropods in it. So there we go. So that's series 4. Let's move on to series 5 now. So let's do this. So series 5, the penultimate series. Let's do this. So episode 1 is My Last Duchess. The TARDIS is drawn off and lands in Winchester in 1995, where the Doctor and his companions come across two boys in an unhappy mood. Once acquainted with each other, the boys tell the Doctor that their father is getting married to a woman called Marion DeVille, but are suspicious of her. The Doctor thinks it's just changing the family roster, but once he gets a glimpse of her, he discovers that Miss DeVille is from another century. And after doing some research about her, he finds that she is a child murderer, marries the widowed father, and starts the spate of killings. The Doctor improvises, invites himself into the boy's house, and makes himself at home. He has planned to interfere with the Napalms and find out how DeVille came here. That is My Last Duchess. Episode 2 is House of Leaves. The TARDIS lands in a place called Vanistad House, a Victorian manor house whose walls are covered in clocks, and that the corridors constantly change. A group of random people from different time zones are playing a game of cat and mouse with something known as the Mant, a creature that preys on its victims with fear and surreal imagery. The Doctor's companions must conquer the plight of the Mant's abilities to strain the human mind and discover what sinister secret is lurking in the attic that has been constantly rerouted. That is House of Leaves. Episode 3 is Purity. The TARDIS lands on the space station turned restaurant Babel 17, and the Doctor has been invited to have dinner with an old friend. While the meal is going smoothly, the station's garbage hold has housed an egg, and ends up being taken to the kitchen area. Once placed near heat, the egg starts releasing tendrils and latches to a waitress. An hour later, the waitress dies after giving birth to an alien creature and starts killing the station staff. The Doctor has to skip dessert and investigate and discover that it's an old enemy of his, a Slovene. Episode 4, Nobody's Harvest. The TARDIS lands in a wheat field in the middle of nowhere, but this is not Earth in the past, present or future. The air is dead but breathable, and the sky is metal with grey blobs posing as clouds, plus bearing the code G12. People have been taken up to the sky due to excessive, abrupt and disgusting behaviour by not following the strict rules of the homeland below. But recent arrests have been more prominent even to people who have stick by the rules, and the answer must be solved by going up beyond G12. Beyond that, nothing is geared beyond the average imagination. That's Nobody's Harvest. Episode 5, Worship My Handbag. Arizona, 2012. A new Aldi store has opened up and the townsfolk are getting into a shopping spree. One of the main items to buy are these caterpillar cakes, and they seem to be selling by the hundreds. But these have a deadly secret, and it's revealed that they are sentient and feast on humankind. When the electrics get sabotaged, the Doctor's companions and the remaining customers are trapped in the store. Their only hope is to survive and not be fed on. Episode 6, Unearthed, Southampton, 963. A woman called Laura Anderson is actually transported back 40 years in the past, and ends up being hunted by a cult living in a disused railway station. The thing they want from her is a fetus that's inside her and that she isn't aware of. And that it's an alien with shape-shifting abilities. The Doctor teams up with Group Captain Gilmore, Rachel Jensen and Alison Williams to investigate the weird goings-on that's happening in the disused station. An old enemy has returned, and the birth of new life is the new phase of terraforming. Episode 7, The Moon of Blood. The planet Fair, a medieval-esque world that is living in fear of the Kakuna, a wolf-like race that prey on the innocent, and the creatures that were once people who took to raping and pillaging as a way of living, who are now in the control of the red moon that hangs in the night sky. The Doctor and his companions enter a nearby village where the locals are scared by a recent attack, and the Doctor has intentions to capture one of these. He successfully does and discovers a psychic link between the creature and the moon, meaning that the moon isn't as hollow and empty as we thought. Episode 8, The Rest of Daniel. Manchester, 1995. American journalist Talia Deeves is fleeing from someone or something from her past. While being incognito at the Science and Industry Museum, she meets the Doctor and recruits him as part of a witness protection scheme because of his ties to UNIT. The Doctor demands what this absurd bribe is about, and Talia explains. When she was a teenager, she discovers a dimensional tear on a TV screen, and a cartoon superhero called Captain Lincoln emerges, rapes her, and later gives birth to his child. Their son Daniel has re-emerged and thought to be dead. He is a hybrid, part human, part cartoon. His lifespan is limited, and his main goal is to kill Mommy Dearest. Episode 9, Bad Voltage. San Francisco, 1981. The space mission Project Taurus has gone successfully well, and the 3 crewmen have returned safely to Earth. The Doctor is suspicious of this because Project Taurus doesn't exist in the history books, and then the 3 crewmen collapse. Awake in the hospital, disfigured, the 3 crewmen escape with deadly powers to absorb electricity and start causing chaos around the city. The Doctor must prevent a major blackout and death count while uncovering the true intentions of the space mission. Episode 10, Fear. On the desolate planet known as Bisidon, something is lurking in the rainforest and is stalking the goers of the Festival of Bet Noir. While people go and banish their fears in a ring-like device for good, but a year ago something has been released from it and now goes seeking the ones who have let their deepest fears go into the vortex. The Doctor unwillingly tries to lure the creature and see what it desires, but it also causes mind-altering complications in the Doctor's memories when performing this mind-numbing ritual. The penultimate story is the Napoleon of Beasts. It's November the 23rd, 2021. 10 years ago, Sarah Jane Smith was buried. Her death was unknown, but she died peacefully. And Luke, Clyde, Ronnie and Sky have gone their separate ways. Luke is working for UNIT, Clyde is a comic book writer, and Ron is a full-time journalist. Sky unfortunately disappeared 5 years ago. While at the anniversary ceremony, they encounter the Doctor. After hours of sharing fond memories of Sarah, the Doctor bids his farewell and heads off. However, returns a few minutes later and explains the real reason why he's here. There has been reports of a secret base doing shady tests on 3 coffins that were extracted from space, and something is going down. The Doctor and company invade the area only to discover a plot to awaken the creatures from slumber under the leadership of Colonel Tia Karim, who was believed to be dead. And the final story of Season 5 is The Devil in the Detail. The planet Grecki is one of the major worlds to have an art gallery that has housed many types from multiple galaxies and multiple centuries. Private investigator Garshak, a mentally augmented Orgron, is sent to investigate the disappearance of Whistler's mother and encounters the doctor, who's in the same case. The two later discover that the painting is left intact, but Whistler's mother is missing from the painting, and is left them puzzled beyond belief. A demonic force is masquerading as Anna McNeil Whistler and is absorbing multiple life forces. There is season 5. Let's go through these now. So, My Last Duchess. This was a 10th Doctor story that I've written, and this was a working title for The Stones of Venice, I think. Obviously, this involves a human character, Marion DeVille. DeVille is named. It's basically named after. It comes after the name Tom DeVille, who was the creator of Urban Gothic, Channel 5 horror anthology from the very early 2000s, like an early Channel 5 show that I saw years ago. So, one thing to say about it, it was basically a 10th Doctor story. It would have been like the 2009 specials, really. So it would have been like, jaded 10th Doctor before the end of time, really. So there we go. Next is House of Leaves. This was part of the arc for the 10th. The Doctor had been stranded in the 1990s. This would have been set in 1992. So this would have been after. Would have been Crimson Dawn, Second Coming, which became Godspeed. And this one, this would have been set in 1992, even though Flowers of Dirt takes place in 1992, it does. Boris and the Man, it's more inspired by the Quack. Is it? Or the Quill, the Quack? From Strange England. If you look at the cover of Strange England, it's a weird steampunk, multi-limbed creature thing, whatever, two mouths or whatever. Heavily inspired by that, really. So like a weird multi-limbed steampunk creature. Just basically preying on people's fears and stuff like that. Very sort of Victoriana, set in a house, Ghostlight-esque story on that one. A bit like Cube as well. Preys on people's fears, really. Purity. This would have been a 6th Doctor story with Mel, I think. Yeah, 6th Doctor and Mel I've written it for. Also features the return of Sylvine, a human hybrid version of Sylvine. So that's strange, really. Nothing else to say about that one, really, but it was written for the 6th Doctor, it was. And Mel, so between Trial of Time Lord and Time of the Rani. So there we go. Nobody's Harvest is next. That was written for The Last Adventures, that was. Just setting again, nothing, just like a surreal story, really. And we get some creatures called the Unknowns, literally called the Unknowns, who live up in the skies of this wheat field, this little farming, whatever you call it, farming field, farming community, live in huts and stuff. So yeah, just in that little stranded bit, really. It's a bit like in Modern Enough Time Doctor Falls, they have like different levels they do of that ship that's getting involved in a black hole, stuck in a black hole with different times of, one side is slower, one time it's faster. Basically that sort of thing, really. Well, there we go. Worship My Handbag, that was a second Doctor story. That was a working title for, what was it called? Alexis, okay, it's one of the Big Finish Alexis Excelis stories by Paul Mars. And it was, the working title for it was called Worship My Handbag Doctor Who. I just called it Worship My Handbag. The Caterpillars. So there's a guy I follow called Jim, who's called Jim Painted. Really good, does some fantastic arts he does. And he gets requests sometimes from people as well, and someone requested him to do like a kaiju King Kong style painting of the chocolate caterpillar cakes that apparently Saint Aldi and Waitrose were doing. And obviously there were causing some controversies. They had different names, but it's basically the same cake really, apparently. And so there's this like massive picture of like 2 chocolate caterpillar cakes fighting off with the British Army down below, like on some stormy night. Really good image, and I thought, something like that'd be interesting. It's like, again, based on a street story in a supermarket, and you got like, caterpillars just eating people like whole, like fat, Arizona, like people in the Arizona state, really, like, just eat them up, really. A bit like pythons, really, or like that scene in Dream Warriors, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, when Freddy turns like a big snake thing, tries to eat a girl whole, just like that, really. Next is Unearthed. So this is a really interesting history. So this was the 3rd Doctor story, originally called Unearthed Steam. It was like with Doctor and Sarah, and it did involve a cult, but this doesn't involve the Zygons though. And it didn't involve the countermeasures team either, from Remembrance of the Daleks. So I think it was late after. It does involve BBV stuff as well, actually. For, Cyberon, the Zygon, porno, whatever you call it. Laura Anderson, played by Joe Castleton, is in this as well. So she's included. She's been taken back in time. I wouldn't think it would have been sort of like involved after Zygon. I think something like that. It would have been involved after that sort of thing. It's sort of alluded to, really. Like she's, or some, I don't know really. There was some weird, bizarre stuff, really, but she's taken back in time, carries a bloody Zygon fetus inside her, really, strangely. So there we go. So Unearthed Steam, it would involve like, let's say, the freakish shit ever, the scary stuff involving rusted engines take on the souls. Like people are sort of killing themselves and become sentient steam trains, an old railway yard, rusted trains, and have like morbid tension stuff, and like pro horror stuff, with hollowed eyes and shocked faces. That would, and also with earpiece and screams. That would have been freaky as hell. But I decided not to go. Trying to go with that. That would have been too way out. Seems like a stupid idea, really. But you can probably do something like that now, with like Shed 17, like Paul's vids and stuff like that. Cults killing themselves, or sacrificing themselves to become trains. Yeah, it seems like a weird thing, really. But I never remember that. So Unearthed, it became a Zygon cult story. It did. Set in an abandoned railway station, which would have been. So that whole thing involving them in a railway station came from a story called Millennium of the Chemical Age, which would have been a sequel to Lost in the Chemical Age, which would have been towards the end, really. So like, if I had sort of included it, it would have been Series 6, really. So if I sort of rounded off that era, really involved going back to Kenley. No, actually, it would have been set in Bowness, really. Did it? Or was it? I don't know. It's been a while. So I sort of got rid of it, really. Sort of dropped that story. But it was involved, let's just say, a Khalid scientist called Vardos. Basically, a Davros protege who's quite obsessed with Davros, because he becomes his own Davros, really, like becomes a copycat Davros, surprisingly, and tries to invent a new version of Daleks called the Eldar. Basically, stealing Davros, becoming Davros and stealing his designs, really, but becoming an anagram, strangely. And do the spider Daleks from that test footage, that CGI test footage that the Leaky Bible was doing, really. Basically that, really. So there we go. That's all backstory. It's been a mishmash of bits and pieces, really, but that's Unearthed for you. Countermeasures. So it could have been an Eighth Doctor story, really. I think it just more like seems like an Eighth Doctor story. Like probably do a follow up, really. Like Remembrance of the Daleks. Got Daleks, of course. This one you got Zygons in, really. But this is the same characters. Gilmore, Rachel, and Alison in. So them lots in 1963. Next is The Moon of Blood. This was a Fourth Doctor story, and more again sort of Hinchcliffe, really. So Hinchcliffe wolf-like story, really. Moon of Blood. That was a working title for Lou. Was it Lou Garou, which is that Mark Platt werewolf story with the Fifth Doctor and Turlough, part of early in the monthly range, the Big Finish. So I just took the title, really. I got it from a site though. It doesn't exist anymore. It's sort of gone now. But there were some other titles floating around again, like Worship My Handbag, Doctor Who. That was one. Chastleman's Child was another one. That was, and The First Keeper. That was another one. And Purity. That was another one. And My Last Duchess. They all come from that website. They did. Moon of Blood as well. I don't know about any others, really. I don't think so, really, on that front. No, I don't think so. I think just them ones, really. So we've got just a werewolf story, just like a werewolf story, medieval werewolf story, something like that, really. I mean, more like Jax, really, from Casal, a bit like that, really. But it's a Fourth Doctor Philip Hinchcliffe story. It is. So I think I saw it's with Sarah Jane Smith. So it would have been like I'll probably actually position it between Mask of Mandragora and Hand of Fear, really. So in season 14, so towards the end, really, of the Hinchcliffe era, but with Sarah Jane Smith and the Fourth Doctor in. So there we go. Then we've got the rest of Daniel. This So this is based on another movie like a Dovetail, based on Alien 3. This was based on the original version of Cool World by Ralph Bakshi, and that it's like a horror, like a comedy horror. But he was prepping about this cartoon child, half cartoon, half human. He was trying, I think he was trying to kill his father or something like that. You know, obviously, I think that's a cartoonist, and he fucked a cartoon character they created really. But like sort of like in the film with the character Gabriel Byrne's character, sort of like I don't think fully, but just involves like Kim Bassinger's character or whatever in that film. Bit of an odd thing. Really. It's more like it plays like a comedy really. What Cool really was really. But I sort of taking taking the original idea of that and just basically dumping in really. It was well the idea of the setting of Manchester in 1905 changed because there was an original story featuring that called The Sentinel, and that would feature data vampires or something like that. But like computer age, first blackout or something like an early Y2K thing, which never happened until all digital tenders had taken that title, that bit really. So yeah, so basically it just involves that Ralph Bakshi original version of Cool World, that whole aspect of it really, and the fact that this person, Tally's son, is basically half cartoon, half hybrid, tries to kill her really, because obviously I think she's all left her for dead really, or attempt to kill it really, but obviously re-emerged and just lust for her blood really. And the title, what was it called? It wasn't called The Sentinel. It was called The Sentinel. I've changed the story, but check out the title. And then, well, the title itself, Rest of Daniel, is actually the working title for Forever Young, the Mel Gibson film from 1993, which I've seen. I have VHS still, believe it or not. Apparently, I was looking through it actually. I was looking for Forever Young. I think I was doing something really. I don't know. I was like, I was looking through Forever Young, and the work and the title, the rest of Daniel, come on, and I looked at it for like, that's a good title actually. I was quite surprised. So the rest of Daniel again. Daniel half cartoon hybrid. The rest of him, or the rest. What is the rest of him? So we don't know. Like he's half human, he's half hybrid. He's trying to exist in two different dimensions. So there we go. So that's the rest of Daniel. Bad Voltage was called Time and Again, and this was a fifth Doctor story. This was same San Francisco again, same thing really, same same story. Featured Tegan and Turlough, and would have been set between Warriors of the Deep and the Awakening. This one of, and that was written alongside the Milk of Paradise. When I was doing Last Adventures, I read these separately. So the Milk of Paradise, Bad Voltage, and something called Exceeding to Decay, which was a first Doctor story, that would have been set between the Time Mender and Galaxy 4. It would have been set primarily after the Three Doctors when he got taken out of time, before that Time edited, didn't they? And also the Time Lords decided, dumping him on this planet called Vestige to do a sort of problem out. We've got this problem, Doctor, dump him on this planet, and once that's completed, you go back to your timeline. If you don't, we'll just take you back to Gallifrey. So that's what Exceeding to Decay was. I think I did reread it a little bit briefly, but featured the second Doctor and Jamie, Polly, and Ben, I think. Or was it Ben? Or was it Ben and Polly? I don't know. I don't know, but I didn't use it in the end really. It felt a bit too similar to the embedding really, a bit similar really. So there we go. Bad Voltage. It's basically the same story really, just with a different title. It came from the title come from a Peter Elson art painting, sci-fi painting. It did, and just the same really. So there we go. Nothing changed about that. Just the title change really. Cold Time and Again became Bad Voltage. Fear. So this was written. I think it was. I'm not sure what about a McCoy story. I think. It does borrow elements from another story that came from the Last Adventurers called After Images. But like the Tomorrowinders, it basically involved it's in Sarajevo in 1958, and this little place where mirrors are like a hall of mirrors, and you're looking to get past and stuff like that, and one person looks in and some weird little creature comes out and starts running amok. It does. That's what After Images was. I didn't really use it in the end, really, because I didn't come anything else really to think of on that story. Then I wrote Fear, which comes from a title for a Rebecca Levine novel that she wrote for the Eighth Doctor books, which never came to be. I think she sort of came but fell through in the slot, really, and that's when the Banquo Legacy comes in, really. If you're familiar with the Eighth Doctor stuff, and that was written. That was so probably. I don't know. I think it was written for McCoy. It did. Obviously, the whole portal thing that's basically like leftover material, a bit like retooled leftover material from After Images, and the little creature that sort of lurks in the rainforest, hunting the people who decide to get rid of the fears. Basically, what the fears they do, they plug themselves in this portal thing, like something like Stargate, and puts in this vortex so they're never to be seen again. Someone's fear, like some weird little demonic creature, comes out, like escape grace or something it's called, which is known as the Afk. It's called. Comes out, pops out, and starts attacking all the people. Really, all the people who probably sucked the deep spheres in the vortex and starts going after them. Really, so that's what fear is really. Where it comes from, where bits and pieces come from, like old story ideas that never have full potential to be reused again. Really, Napoleon beat the Napoleon of Beasts. Excuse my stuttering a little bit. The title comes from a Lawrence Miles novel that he did, which was actually his working title for the Adventuress of Henrietta Street. That was his working title, and I just basically just chose that really. This is basically a follow-up to Sarah Jane Adventures, really. So this was a 10th Doctor story that was again written. It focuses on again same sort of like present time, 10 years after Sarah Jane Smith. Well, Elizabeth Sladen actually passed away, so in real time Sarah Jane Smith sadly passed away unknowingly, and so it takes 10 years like a 10th anniversary reunion. It just features the three characters, Ronnie, Luke, Clyde, and Rani, really, and it is a sequel to Death to the Doctor, which of course features the return of Colonel Tia, Karim, and the Shan Chief, who killed an explosion they were in the unit base when they were trying to form a tie scheme with Joe Jones and Sarah Jane Smith. Obviously, they have featured the 11th Doctor Matt Smith in. And so this sort of comes. It's basically featured. It also has the 10th Doctor in it, but it's like he doesn't really know really until the 11th Doctor, even though he's all lost his memory. I don't know who really knows really that story, to be honest. Obviously they've got the Shan Chief, more like disfigured, aggressive, horrific looking Shan Chief, like alien vulture humanoids, and Korea Karim, who's more disfigured and everything else. Like she's like a horrific burn victim, really. Like a corrupt unit colonel. She is. Happens in Sarah Jane Smith. Actually, if you look at Invasion of the Bane, and so unit, some untrustworthy people in unit actually. So we get something like that. Really, it does borrow some elements from Life Force, the Toby Hooper movie. Involved with the three coffins, like some weird space creatures, like pre-humanoids in glass coffins that they sort of secretly brought from space and hide in this base or something, just like that really. Nothing much to it really. Oh, it also involves Ronnie and Clyde, yes, and it does involve a sex scene as well. So there we go. And then finally we got the Devil in the Detail. So the title comes from a working title, or a proposed title for Demontage, the Justin Richards 8th Doctor novel. Although it was sort of meant to be something called Stripper. I think it was called The Devil in Detail. You got Garshak, who's that augmented Orgon private detective. Comes from the Bernie Summerfield novel Mean Streets by Terrence Dicks from Messiah 7. So early Benny stuff, at that time really. And and also it's sort of the return of the Orgon, but he's not like the Orgons from Lost in the Chemical Age. He's more intelligent and he's a private detective really. So goes on searching. Whistler's mother. It just comes from Mr. B being the ultimate disaster movie really, and basically a bit like Mona Lisa's Revenge from Sarah Jane Smith, but more demonic. A bit like Godspeed anyway, but like it's like this like demonic force takes on the form of somehow just gets inside of Whistler's mother, takes the form of like the bonus and Flatline, really, and basically goes around sucking souls in a massive art gallery, intergalactic art gallery. So there we go. That's down in the detail really, but it's like a bit of detective fun romp really, but with horrific tones in it. That was written for the Fifth Doctor, really. So that's a Peter Davison story, another Peter Davison story. Teaming up, really. I'm not too sure who it would have been. Or was it with Turlo? Like, Resurrection between Resurrection of the Daleks and Part 5, maybe, I think. You know, like between like Lords of Storm and stuff like that. And Lugaroo, you know, the big fish stuff, Phantasmagoria, that type of stuff. Yeah, I think it would have been actually. So yeah, Fifth Doctor story, Turlo with Garshak the Private Detective. So there we go. So we reached the final series of this. So series 6, or the third series of Class of 96. There we go. So last 12 stories to go through. So let's go through these. So episode 1, The Wild Bloods Empire. Ceres is a planet that has anomaly existence in the Romar system. It's never been invaded by other alien races, nor has been visited by countless floods of tourists. It remains peaceful and invisible to the eye for centuries. The TARDIS lands in the jungle, where the Doctor and his companions meet a small expedition searching for the planet's ruins on this beautiful, dense planet. The peace is shattered when one of the expedition's crew members spots an insect in defence, and the inhabitants soon start attacking the crew for breaking their nature. Episode 2, Husbands and Wives, 1996. There's a glass house in the outskirts of Cheltenham. Supposedly it's a privatised psychiatric hospital that deals with widows who have lost their loved ones and have strong suicidal tendencies after their loss. Dr. Sam Maguire has in his possession a progenation machine and plans to give their patients a soulmate that they're in need for. The doctor comes across a police investigation of one of the patients found dead a few miles from the glass house. Seeing where the person has escaped from, the doctor sneaks in but is suddenly tranquilised by the staff and is put in a straitjacket. Why is one of the patients escaped and died? And why is the newly generated soulmate start attacking the patients that they created for? Episode 3, Swine Amongst the Nightingales. The Doctor's companions accidentally fall through a hole in reality and land in Rhode Island, 1778, during the Battle of Quaker Hill. Also falling from the hole in reality is a grey-skinned, metallic, red-headed woman called the Malta, who was once an executed Gallifreyan medicine bearer. The Doctor only knows her from stories of the Dark Times, and suddenly decides to face her against the deadly being from his home world's past, leaving his companions to one side to face the unthinkable. Episode 4, HiveMind. The TARDIS lands on the planet Falter, where the inhabitants have been reduced to psychotic couch potatoes, and that television genres like reality, soap operas, and game shows are mentally draining all those for quite some time. The Doctor and his companions head to a media complex, where numerous channels galaxy-wide are transmitted, and plan to meet the people responsible. What the Doctor doesn't expect is a supercomputer called VIC, or VIC. It's controlling the network and plans to kill the interfering Doctor on live broadcasts by taking on multiple forms of 90s alumni. Michael Barrymore, Jeremy Clarkson, Rosemary Conley, Angus Deaton, and Joe Pasquale. Be back after these messages. Episode 5, Broken Heroes. The TARDIS lands on the streets of Derry in 1972 on the day of the Boxside Massacre. There's a shapeshifter running loose and is posing as a member of the British Army. A bounty hunter called Cutthroat is hunting the creature for profit and is determined to catch it. The Doctor and his companions must ease through the way through Derry and must come to terms with that moment in history, as well as be left alone, especially during these rampant political times. Time's ticking, and Irish soldiers have seen a cactus-skinned man lurking in the streets. Episode 6, Unorthodox Sorcery. Jerusalem, 1099. The final days of the First Crusade are ending. The Crusaders have recovered the Holy Land from Islamic rule, but the end result isn't what the Doctor and his companions expected. Multiple Crusaders and Muslims are found dead with a jewel placed in the middle of their foreheads, and a religious sect is planned to take over the Holy Land for their own purposes. The Doctor recognises the leader of the sect as Khalid, and soon realises that he is a being with dark powers that could change history. It's not the Master, but the being that he once impersonated. Episode 7, The Dry Salvages. The TARDIS lands on a transport ship that is floating in space, and that's when the strange happenings start. Humanoid animals are running amok. A soldier from the Dalek Wars is trapped in his cell suffering from severe post-traumatic stress, and the Doctor is escorted to an empty theatre where Mandarin neurosurgeons are experimenting on chimpanzees by inserting parts of brain tissue for an aborted experiment nicknamed the Dry Salvage. The Doctor berates them, that they're going to be responsible for this tampering with the primate taxonomy, and that once they're out of control, out of the control, their massacres will be influenced by misunderstanding. That's the Dry Salvages. Episode 8, Placid Treachery. The Doctor shows his companions an image of the Statue of Liberty on the TIE scanner. Venturing outside, they find out they're not in the United States of America, but in a collection of miniature landmarks from around the world situated in Singapore in 1985. When walking around, they soon notice that the statues begin to move, and the Doctor realises that they're autons. The travellers investigate and discover that the Master has allied with an Essene consciousness, when the Doctor previously encountered them before. His plans on creating new autons with bullets that can bounce off corners and hands that can melt the nose and face of the adversary. Episode 9, Midwinter. The HiveMind Hotel is a posh hotel located in the mountains, and heavy snowdrifts have caused communications cause array. The TARDIS lands in the basement of the hotel and comes across the guests feeling strange, like if they're all paranoid or something. In this place they're frightened of. A portal has been activated from a mirror in a master suite, and an 8-legged centaur is scuttling around the corridors hunting it for prey. The doctors round up the guests for safety and play a little bullfight with the creature. Episode 10, Killers of the Dark. The TARDIS lands on the planet Kanachi. Once landed, the Doctor is quickly captured by a group of corrupt members of the Celestial Intervention Agency and questions him about the whereabouts of the cat people of Jinsen, who were outsiders on Gallifrey and planned to take down the Time Lords due to their knowledge of hidden agendas. The Doctor soon is released by the cat people, and they make a pact with him to take down the corrupt members. Meanwhile, the Doctor's companions are trapped in the TARDIS, where the agency are planning to erase their memories and take them back to their own time. But the penultimate story is Architect of Pain. The TARDIS lands on the planet Prior Sect, and the Doctor and his companions encounter society thrown in disarray. A group of women, known as the mothers of the disappeared, are trying to gain access through a newly built pyramid outside the village known as Serenity to retrieve their teenage daughters from a space hippie called Glazer, who has influenced them to join his ever-growing crazy cultists that involves sex and suicide. There's a revolution in the air, and it's something the Doctor can stop at the drop of a hat. And the final story of this series, of course, the very final story to talk about is Infinity's End. Birmingham, 1996. A giant golden sphinx has landed in the middle of the city square, and the locals are welcomed by the alien race known as the Veridans, who offer women empowerment over the opposite sex. A homing signal emerges out of the Sphinx, and the women soon start rioting and brutally murdering their spouses and random bystanders. A unit reunion is off the cards for Leopard Stewart and Benton, as they join Bambera to assist the Doctor to save mankind. But this is the Doctor's last stand, and the end is near. Time to save Earth one more time. And there we go. That is Series 6. And that's the last of the stories. Let's briefly go through them. The Wildbloods Empire. This was written for the Ninth Doctor. This is a Ninth Doctor story. Would have been like one of the rare occasions they've been on a planet. Obviously, there was the monsters inside. When he went to Justicia, obviously, well, I did Sarah. Obviously, it features the Takoa tribe, which was a name of a planet I did for historical ice rigger. That I was originally planned, but never came to be. Well, not really. So I gave up on it really and just junked it. Really. So yeah, that was there. And basically, it's like, it's based on a paint. Well, the whole idea of the look of it is based on a painting called, what's it called, Lord of the Spiders by Tim White. That's it. In the book I got a couple of years back, with like sci-fi art and stuff like that. I thought it's pretty impressive, like jungle and purple sky and stuff like that. It does have a bit of like a Cannibal Tribe feel about it, like with Cannibal Holocaust, the green, what do you call that? Eli Roth film. Basically like that, really, like Cannibal Tribe, and also like a peaceful tribe, and until people, exhibitions and stuff like that, start messing with nature and everything else and swine insects, because that makes them angry and tries to kill them, so they have to flee the jungle. They do. That's what the Wildbloods Empire is about. So, Husbands and Wives is next, and that's a Third Doctor story. That would have been between Planet of the Daleks and Green Devil, Third Doctor and Joe. Very influenced by Bad Therapy, the Matt Jones Virgin New Adventures. It does feature. It's very similar in regards. Like you get stuff like what do you call them? Again, the creatures really. So like they get made for these people, really for the patients. So they can have like a couple, like a life partner or stuff like that. You know, made of their thoughts all just to keep them, you know, sane. Really, just like keep them calm and not commit suicide or have suicidal thoughts. Really, Dr. Sam Maguire is based on Roger Moore. If you've ever seen the film The Quest, basically that look like bearded Roger Moore look on him. Really, so pretty good. He's sort of like a bit of a bit of an anti-hero, sort of like that really in The Quest. Really, obviously he's you know, sort of the main villain of Husbands and Wives. So like, think of this: John Pertwee versus Roger Moore. You know, in this story, that'd be pretty interesting. So there we go. That's what Husbands and Wives were. So Third Doctor story, Roger Moore's the main villain. There we go. Bit like similar thing to Bad Therapy, really. On that front, if you've ever read the novel. Swine Amongst the Nightingales. This is 10th Doctor story. This is, and did I do something with it before? I don't really know actually. So Swine Against Mine. I don't know where the name comes from, but basically Doctor Who in Gettysburg, something like that. But like, you know, you get introduced the Grayskin character. It's basically, if you've ever seen Marilyn Manson with that music video of him like all Grayskin like he's a woman. I think the album, his album art as well, like his 96 album, I think. Basically that really, but some horrific Grayskin creature from Gallifrey lore is introduced really. So some medicine woman that got executed, and you know, Doctor must face it off really. Again, this is same with My Last Duchess. This is like the 2009 specials. This is so it's 10th Doctor story. Him on his own really ends up falling through. It's basically like Christmas on a Rational Planet. Borrows elements from that. You know, Ross gets they're in Arizona 2012, and Ross falls down a portal by the gynoid and ends up in New York in 1799. 1799. She does. Basically like a silly thing, but I was thinking about, you know, I think I saw Gettysburg recently, or someone I knew had Gettysburg, I don't know. But basically, like, maybe try something like that, really. Like during the American Civil War, there's jump in there. I think Blood and Hope, that's another one that does it, really. So, yeah, there we go. HiveMind, a funny one this is. This comes from Last Duchess as well. I just think it's funny. It features, like, as I mentioned before, the list of names: Michael Barrymore, Jeremy Clarkson, Rosemary Conley, Angus Deaton, and Joe Pasquale. It's basically a list of people who probably had VHS releases on the VCI at the time. Really, this is the time when I was crapping on shit on VCI at the time. Really, you know, it's like you know that sort of thing, like shit on it, shit on this sort of thing. Really, on them really, and just do something really funny. Like they're like very strong, powerful beings, even though it's got to take the form of these presenters, comedians, you know, these sort of people are probably sort of well known in the 90s of that time, really. You know, Rosemary Conley fucking fitness videos, Jeremy Clarkson doing his own solo things, you know, in between the old Top Gear and the new Top Gear, and Michael Barrymore doing his own, just doing his own thing, really, and also doing kids to say the funniest things. But Joe Pasquale, stand-up comedian at the time, Angus Deaton, haven't got news for you. That sort of thing, really. And there's this take on, you know, that they're like, you know, or like, you know, like they look normal, but they're very strong, powerful, and probably mangle you to death like Bane and break your backs and stuff, you know, and try and kill the Doctor in like a multi-wrestling match to the death, really. That sort of thing. And VIC. So when I was looking at, it was before I found videos on Amazon, really, just looking through, and they spelt it wrong. Like, instead of VCI, it's spelled VIC on it. Channel 4 VIC, and I thought, like, it's a funny thing. And it's like a little in joke, really, of Amazon. You know, getting VCI wrong, call it VIC. So there we go. The funny thing. Now, next was Broken Heroes. This is basically Doctor Who in Sunday, Bloody Sunday, really. Originally titled Fury of the Black Angel, it was. Broken Heroes itself was a different story entirely. All the title comes from a different story involving an Ark of the Covenant type story, set in 3 different time zones, like in Okashiri, Krakatoa, and Peru, in different time zones, involve different raiders. You know, different people like treasure raiders or treasure hunters, seeing the Ark of the Covenant and being killed, reduced to dust by it, stuff like that. I didn't really enjoy that, really. Just like an idea that floated, that sort of popped around, but just there, really. So, Broken Heroes, it sort of fits the title. Instead of like Fury of the Black Angel, the shapeshifter, you got Zolf Furin, basically Meglos, like a Meglos type character in this. Cutthroat come from Maniac's Tier, actually, the original version of Maniac's Tier. Indeed, so it's basically, it's like, again, it also borrows elements from a story called Boxer Uprising, like an early version of Boxer Uprising involving a shapeshifter in the Chinese Rebellion. That's all I think I originally wrote for the Last Adventures, but never just jumped it at the end really. But I use that story idea really. It sort of fits really. There's a shapeshifter that's going around while, political upheaval's going on, and also bloody Sunday's happening. The Boxer Massacre's going on, and so there we go. That sort of thing just happens to be quite a dark story as well. Again, just a bit of history. I think again, Doctor's never done before. So there we go. Unorthodox Sorcery. The return of Khalid from Time Flight. So obviously Khalid's more powerful dark being, like a powerful being with dark powers on. Dark powers like the actual Khalid, not the Master disguise in Time Flight. Even though the Doctor probably assumes that it's the Master again taking the form, but it's not. He's a proper Khalid, like he's a proper being that the Master's just ripped off, impersonated, or make a fool of, really. And he does mention it, it's probably you probably might know about sort of briefly about that, the Xanon and stuff like that, the often taking Concord back to prehistoric times, stuff like that. Also, it's in the Crusade. I just don't know if I like Doctor and the Crusaders, really. I do like story. I've only read the Target novel, so I do think it's one of my favourites. That's one of my favourites. One of the original three and the bunch, really, like with Darks and Zabi. David Whittaker's novelization of that. So yeah, I do like that actually. So that's same like in the Crusade, looking at it, it's like I could probably do something like that. Really, do the first Crusade. I think even though the Crusade is set doing the second Crusade. The second Crusade is where the Crusade or Doctor and the Crusaders is set. This is in the first one. This is so there we go. Set in Jerusalem it is. So there we go. Nothing much to say really. Just it's got the return of Khalid, and yeah, that's all thing. Again, religious sect sort of comes from like the Chapel of Saint Anthony, from Saint Anthony's Fire. There we go. About that. And the Dry Salvages is next. A different story. So it's another story that has a same title but a different story entirely. So the original story involves, the Doctor and his companions end on planets where the temperatures roaring high. The Doctor's companions end up being burnt. It's like 42 in a way. Like, it has to take time to actually, try and get survived and not be burnt alive, really. That was the original story on it. This one takes elements from two different stories. One called Brainwave, which most of the story involves, the Mandarin neurosurgeons and the chimpanzees. That was set in Shanghai 1941, like a World War II story set in Shanghai, and involved, Mandarin soldiers turning chimpanzees into super soldiers, really. In this case, it's just like people messing brain tissue. The whole thing with humanoid animals and that Dalek soldier from the Dalek Wars come from a story called Fearful Symmetry, which actually originates from a script a guy called Eddie Davis written, an Australian fellow who I met on the who I know from the Virgin New Adventures Facebook group I'm on, which we talk about off media and stuff like that. Many people are on that actually. Like Alistair Pearson's on it, David J. Howe's on it, Jeff Cummins is on it. A few people of the artists are on it. A few people as well. Maybe artists, some few editors, and obviously David J. Howe's on it as well. Appearing on a few other people like Jules Burt is on it. He's on it as well. Maybe a few people, Doctor YouTubers. I don't really know actually. I think Matthew Toffler's on there as well. I think actually. I think so actually. So we're in that weird little group we are about talk about expanded media, mainly the books really. BBC F Doctor, Virgin New Adventures, Missing Adventures, mainly the Virgin stuff, good stuff. So. Obviously, he wrote a Seventh Doctor story with Ace and Benny on it. He only read the first part. I actually do have it on here. Originally it was called Nuthouse in Space. It was called, and everyone enjoyed the script, but the title said it was deemed offensive. So I basically come up with Fearful Symmetry, which was there another called written by Daniel Manny? I think it was like something like that. Really. I mean, same with like when I found the Drowned Towers, really. So yeah. So there we go. So it's basically a mixture of Fearful Symmetry and Brainwave, really. Set on a spaceship involving, like mental patients, neurosurgeons, planting brain tissue in chimpanzees. So they go and run and cause chaos, like Planet of Apes, Frankenstein shit or something. I don't know. Then we've got Plastic Treachery, which is basically the yellow fever and how to cure it story. A bit without the Rani, and it's just the Master and Nestine Consciousness. In this one, the Autons are based on. If you've ever seen a film called Tourist Trap, just like that, design-wise, they're like that, really. So very freaky designs on them. And the Master is portrayed by Anthony Ainley. How he looks in Destiny of the Doctors. So basically, mid-late 90s look style, really. And it's the only story that features the Master in. He only appears in this story, he does. So he doesn't appear in anywhere else, really. So there we go. So it's based on that Robert Holmes story. Same New Orleans as meant to be for the original season 23. So obviously it's finally here now. Plastic Treachery, that comes from the Batman March fan film he did years ago, like a decade ago. Oh yeah, like a decade ago he did that. And yeah, I basically named the title. It all fits. Plastic Treachery, yeah, it's Autons, so yeah, I'll just use it. Next up is Midwinter. So this would have been a third Doctor story as well. This it would have been like a season 7 story actually, with some, sort of Earthbound-based, exile story based with Liz Shaw, or maybe post Liz's departure. I'm not too sure. It's a bit like God Complex in a way. It's in a hotel. The eight-legged centaur. So this come from like original ideas between Russell T Davies and Phil Ford. Basically, before Waters of Mars came about, I think it was called A Midwinter's Tale, really. And basically, original idea. I think one original idea was to basically set it in, a hotel involved a woman disillusioned with her family over Christmas apparently, and involved an eight-legged centaur running amok, really. So that was basically what it was, really. So I just stuck with that, really. So it's basically Midwinter's Tale, really. Just involves with people just being frightened of an eight-legged centaur sculling around the corridors, taking people out. Yeah, just like that, really. So it's fun running through corridors romp, really. Just with a freaky centaur with 8 legs. So there we go. Like spider-like centaur. Bit freaky. And then we've got the Killers of Dark, which come from a season 15 story written by David Weir, which would have been the finale for that story, but instead we come to Invasion of Time, and you get involved with the Killer Cats of Ginseng, Celestial Agency. It's a very Gallifrey-based story, it is, and it borrows elements from war games. Obviously, the Time was trying to, basically, well, not really. It sort of alludes to the war games, really. It alludes to that sort of bit in the war games when Jamie and Zoe get their memories erased and they go back to their own times. In this case, the Kynes don't really. Well, one Kyne doesn't really. Doesn't get his memories wiped and get taken by his home place, really. Well, who knows, really. So you get it's very Gallifrey lore based, really. The Celestial Sea and the Killer Cats of Ginseng, who are basically, again, like the outsiders, like they're sort of like weird cat people on the outside outskirts of Gallifrey that Time try to basically get rid of, really, but they know about about the sinister goings on, really, how corrupt Gallifrey is and stuff, so they know. And you got the Celestial Agency and the CIA trying to take them out, really. So there we go. The penultimate story, Architect of Pain. This comes from a story called Serenity. This did so. So instead of a pyramid, it was a bull, like a spear thing, like a dome. It's called Serenity, and it featured. It was more like Brian Eustace Society, involved in bloody family incest and stuff like that, like a Wince sex cult. The Moors Have Disappeared come from that U2 song from Joshua Tree, and it's basically the same thing. Although Glazer, it's more like a Charles Manson influence in this thing. With Glazer trying to influence teenage girls to join him, become part of his cult, really. Because I watched Mary Harron's Charlie Says recently with Matt Smith, actually, believe it or not, with Hannah Murray and Suki Waterhouse. That is something. That is really something. That is interesting. A bit of an interesting performance by Matt Smith as Charles Manson. Jeez, yeah. So that's all really influenced the style, the sort of feel of Architect of Pain, really. And yeah, it's basically set a pyramid. It was originally meant to be what do you call it? Involve like a weird society about the Marquis de Sade, about sexual, like sort of BDSM weirdness. But I just changed it to like make it like Serenity again, but have like a Manson family influence. Really, like this weird space hippies enticing people to go to his pyramid and you know just get involved with whole sex and suicide and killings and stuff. Really, and these group of mothers in hoods and stuff like hooded monk-like mothers or something like that. Try and get the doors back. Really, get the family back. Really, and that's what Architect of Pain really is. So the name comes from, and same with Export USA, it comes from like two short films done by J.G. Ballard as well, or something to do with J.G. Ballard, or actually no, Export USA comes from the Atrocity Exhibition, like the American title for the Atrocity Exhibition. Architect of Pain, I think, comes from a David Cronenberg short film or something like that. I think he did, which is on the extras on the Crash Blu-ray by our video, which I've got. Comes from there. So those titles come from that bloody Blu-ray of the film. So there we go, really. So Architect of Pain, bit of buying user society, mixing it with some Manson family stuff as well. So and putting in a pyramid. So there we go. And finally, we have Finity's End. So this is again comes from a fan audio series where the Doctor was stunned in the 1990s. Obviously, this is now changed. It was meant to be set in 1996. And also, I did for Last Adventures, it was the penultimate story. This was so. This would have been leading to a story called Countdown, which would have been the final story, obviously, and that involved children being possessed by videotapes. Really, like they put videotape, but they're so possessed them and turned them into like raving lunatics and kill their parents or something, really, and hang the characters in like a very horrible riot thing, like in Downing Street or something like that. Say in London. Obviously, felt dissatisfied really, and actually the end itself, it was a weird fucking ending that was for Countdown, involving an emperor which is like and basically looked like something else but nude in a bleed tube or something like that. And she had powerful beyond belief, and that the Doctor never, the Time Lords never existed, and that the characters who were like wasn't Power Werther, Mr. Toad, Joshua Jones, whatever, existed in that place really. Like they were sort of out their realities, and the Doctor was like, there's like the character on the television show, and that featured an alternative incarnations or something like that. It was weird and quite messed up, not thought out really. Whereas this, it's basically, this was an old idea really, and around the whole Sphinx thing comes from an ornament I have in this house actually, come from Las Vegas. I think when my grandparents or some of the family went to Las Vegas, I think actually, or got something, maybe, I don't know if they've been to America, I don't know, or it's just something they picked up that actually said from Las Vegas, MGM Studios, it says, and I just use that as an idea as a spaceship to land in Birmingham of all things. And and then we got the turn of the Veridans from Grey Area. They've come back, and it just features the return of Unit really. Mike Cates was originally meant to be in it, but just changed really. I think obviously after everything in the Poe era, I just don't know. Obviously he's done stuff with like the Hornet's Nest and stuff with the Fourth Doctor and Mrs. Wibsey, whatever. And so there we go, guys. So there we go. That's Finity's End, and that's it. That is Class of 96, or the whole of it, series 4, 5 and 6, and that's it. That is, I'm done. That's the whole of it. Sorted. Thank you guys for watching this. Thank you guys for doing this rambling video. So there we go. So that's the second part done, and that's it. That's all I can say about this. Class of A9, Class of 96, Class of Pi, whatever you call it. This Doctor Who spin-off I've worked on for 5 years. Finally out. It's all complete. It's fine. It's all complete. So there we go. Lost stories. You talk about 78 stories in total. Jesus Christ. Spans like 12, 6 seasons really. So there we go. Thank you for listening in, watching me ramble. There we go, guys. Right. Thanks for watching. and I'll see you for the next video. See you later.